Welcome back to Media Capital, the show where consumer investing meets media innovation. Today, we're joined by Simone Kendle, CEO of Wove, the custom jewelry brand that's redefining what luxury means. Wove blends deep personalization, craftsmanship, and trust in a way that traditional jewelry industry has never done. Under Simone's leadership, Wove is quickly becoming a cultural force, most recently capturing headlines when Taylor Swift was seen wearing their bracelets. On this episode, we'll talk about her journey, how she's scaling a company rooted in authenticity and innovation, and what it takes to create consumer brands that connect deeply and grow fast in today's world. Simone, it's such a pleasure to have you on this show. So much to talk about. Thank you
Yeah.
for joining us.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me, Diana. And I feel like we've talked a lot about Wove, but there's still so much more to uncover. So this is going to be fun.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about your journey before we go into Wolf, because I think you have a
Yeah.
fascinating personal story as well as professional story. And you have a very busy traveling schedule coming up in the
Yes,
next few
I
weeks.
do.
Yeah,
Yep.
a lot of interviews in studio. We'll talk about that as well. But I wanted to talk to you about before, obviously, we met and discussed Wolf. You started another company before, which was in beauty and AI. You started your career in corporate America with Capital One, and then you joined Wove. So you took over as a CEO, and all of this as a single mother. And I have to ask, what experiences or challenges perhaps shaped you as a leader or founder throughout all these years?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a lot. It's been a journey, right? Going from simply corporate America to entrepreneurship in a big way was a big transformational moment for me. And so I would say the fundamental layer that goes across all of my career steps have been really learning by doing. So there's often not a blueprint. Even when I think back to my first roles at Capital One, I was bouncing around. I was going from being a process management intern to being a sales and customer service coach, managing people at 23, to leading customer insights for the president of the bank and his senior leadership team. And a lot of times these roles weren't necessarily set in stone when I got there. They were always evolving. There was always this entrepreneurial spirit as I went through these roles, even in corporate America. But I was lucky enough to be all at Capital One. And so it was a very safe space to learn, grow, but really learn through doing and being an active participant in what the bank was focused on at the time, which gave me the sort of underpinning of how I approached being a founder, how I approach really living my life, managing all the things. Wharton came into the fold as being that stepping stone for me from going from Capital One corporate ladder climbing sort of world to really being an entrepreneur full time. I'd always had that entrepreneurship spirit in corporate America. I also always had a side hustle. I had sold hair extensions from my 5 to 9 for 5 years before I went to business school. So you can imagine I'm very used to doing multiple things at the same time, but I really like to be active and in the mix of things. I really love spaces where I can make an impact and see really the fruit of my labor. One of the things I knew I never wanted to do was sit in an ivory tower and feel like I couldn't make an impact. And so to do that, you got to get in there, you got to do the work. So when I transitioned from going from corporate world to Wharton and really saying, okay, here's now the point where I'm putting all the disparate parts of my life, my love for beauty, my love for consumer, my process orientation around how things should work and making those improvements and innovating along the way into a world where I was also layering in that previous experience as an entrepreneur, previous experience in the hair industry as the co-founder and CMO at Parfait, which really came to fruition while I was at business school. And so I'd say all of those things come together for me as that underpinning of, again, learning as I do. So whether it's learning new processes from scratch, learning how to fundraise, right, from scratch, at least I had a product that I knew very well. So while pitching is always hard, I knew everything you can know about hair extensions. That learning by doing and understanding at least a bit of depth, right, really has helped me along the way. So I've always just been a very active participant in my growth. And that usually just means I'm doing a lot of things at the same time.
For the last, 6 weeks, we've been working together on getting the campaign ready. And honestly, internally in the team at MFG, we always ask ourselves how you pull this up. You're so energetic, you have so much energy, and you're always like just on top of things, always extremely organized and very driven. And It's interesting how, as you're explaining, almost like your previous experience naturally led you to Wolf. You took over the original founders, and I'm curious how that experience was and how you actually came across Wolf in the first place.
Yeah, so shout out to Wharton MBAs. Okay, one thing we're gonna do is lean on the network and show up for each other. And so I always have to put a shameless plug that there's a lot of discourse out there about whether an MBA is worth it, whether it's a good stepping stone for your career. Obviously, everybody has their own situation, but for me, it was a life changer. It gave me access to people and learning environments that I would otherwise never had exposure to. And my move, even into Parfait, that was my classmate, right? Like I was using my experiences outside of the Ivy League world. I went to a state undergrad school, so nothing flashy there. But what Wharton was able to do is connect me with the people that I needed to know to then take it to the next level. And so while I was at Parfait, I had a few entrepreneurial experiences while I was at Wharton. One of them was with a now one of our investors, but at the time he was my co-founder in my first year of business school on a really a custom subscription box for cannabis products that were based on health, wellness, but really again focused on creating connecting with products that match what you actually needed in your life and wasn't saying, "Hey, buy this product because I think it's cool." And so that's always been the underpinning of wherever I've been. In the journey of being at Parfait and being in this custom world, I still stayed in contact with that first year co-founder friend. We didn't launch the business. COVID messed up our plans, but he went off and did an amazing brand. And then I went off and did Parfait. And so over that, oh gosh, it was probably, yeah, 2 years, we had stayed in contact. And one of the things that he did a great job of was kept founders connected through that founder journey post business school. He was a CEO of a brand. I was CMO of a brand. And funny enough, one of the founders of Wove was on those founder circle calls that he would have for us in this network. And so I had met one of the founders at Wove. I had met Drew, who's still on our board today. I had met him, heard the Wove story from a timeline perspective and founder perspective. They were always like 6 to 8 months behind where Parfait was, just in terms of the cycle, right, of fundraising. Like they were still getting their first product to market, like all of that. But immediately I saw their customer journey, I saw their branding, I saw the intentionality behind how they operated, the really like focus they had on leadership and culture. The founders are two West Point grads, Army Rangers. I'm a military brat. My parents were both in the Air Force, enlisted. I lived overseas, but by the time I was 13, I had only lived overseas on base. So to know that this founder was not only in the military, but a military leader. And if you're in the military community, you understand there are some really strict, but such powerful pillars of leadership and team building and just ethics, right? There's certain things that it's a no nonsense, but it's also a place where it's super inclusive and understanding that people are coming from different walks of life. But the soldier next to me is going to support me and I'm going to support them, those questions asked. So when I got to know the brand from the outside, I said, "Oh my gosh, I love this. Y'all are great. You're doing very similar things as what we're doing at Parfait, just in rings." And so when I got a call from my Wharton co-founder turned now Wove investor, and he just said, "Hey, look, I've got this crazy opportunity. I know you're killing it at Parfait. Are you open to a conversation?" Initially, I was a little nervous about it, to be honest. We were at seed stage, right? And so you don't hear about a lot of those changes happening. And I loved Parfait. I felt like that was my baby. I was so committed, and I still am committed to that brand, and I love that brand. But I think fundamentally, what it turned to me after a lot of prayer was, who do I really want to be in this world? What kind of life and impact do I want to create? And what I recognized was all of the experiences that I had at Capital One, running my own business as a Girl Scout, selling Girl Scout cookies, like all of these life experiences I've had have always put me in a place of an operator and not a marketer only. And so I felt like at Parfait, although I love the brand, I was always going to be put in that one lane. And that really was just underserving what I really wanted to do, what I was really focused on. And quickly enough, had a lot of conversations and took some looks at the P&L and balance sheets and all the things and realized the bones of this business is great. And I ended up meeting a few of their investors ahead of time. Their team did a great job of creating videos of each member on the team, explaining their job, what they did, who they were. So I felt like I really had a good, tangible understanding of who the team was, who was actually working on the brand every day. And it was just all of the things you want, right? You want a great product, you want great people, you want great margins. And we had all of those things in Wove. And so their biggest problem was no one knew they existed. And that was really the biggest gap for the brand was we were spending inefficiently on marketing because we really hadn't figured that piece out. And that's the gauntlet of seed stage, right? That is the hardest part ever is to figure out what that right mix is, especially in a brand like ours that is custom and it is niche to a degree because of the timing, because of the product, the price point, right? There's all those things to keep in mind. And you're also on a timeline with venture capital, right? There's a certain level of pressure and commitment that you are to hit a certain point at a certain time. And I think at the time, the founders knew they had built so much good, but they were missing that piece of, okay, how do we navigate this next level where marketing is actually going to make or break this brand? And through all of those experiences I've had already, and then mixed with, hey, I'm walking in as a founder who's in the similar position a year ahead, understanding what I've already went through, I've already cracked ads, I've already cracked our core message, like all those things, but also really understanding how to lead a team and commit to the culture that was already set. But as you mentioned earlier, I have a lot of energy and I work at a certain pace and I have a certain level of diligence in all the things that I do. And I think that was the other missing piece that I really wanted to get the brand into the right pace of work because we were venture backed. And I felt like early on, we weren't necessarily operating in that way. There was just a speed that I wasn't feeling when I first joined the brand. And so that's really where I felt like I was bringing a ton of value early on was just getting the nuts and bolts together for this thing to really scale.
The founders have an interesting story of how they started this company in military and your backgrounds. And even if I look back, I feel like if we were timing this slightly differently, we could have probably met even earlier in the year because I met Dan from Springdale. It was back in March in Austin for South by. It was just an initial introductory meeting. And then 3 months later, we sat on a call and he's one of your board advisors. So the world is very small, exactly like you said, when you are in the right networks. Let's talk a bit about actually engagement rings, right? Because that's essentially the core of Wove. It's such an emotional purchase. So how do you think about the brand's deeper purpose about selling engagement rings, but also jewelry in general in people's lives?
It's so personal yet public at the same time. It's one of the most intimate things you could wear day to day. And that always was a big deal for me when I was even at Parfait, right? We talk about our hair very similarly, the way we wear it, if we have hair or not, how we decide to show if we're going through something health wise with our hair or not. There's so many layers to that. I was very in tune with the impact of something that can be very intimate, but it's sitting on your body where everybody in the world will see it. And so that connection always is a big thing for me. The next layer of that is I am just obsessed with the idea of gold and what gold means. And not just from a market version, but like gold has been referenced in biblical terms. Gold is one of the things that holds the most value. It literally sets the economy. Like gold is the thing that if everything else falls apart, if you have a gold brick, you're good. So like connecting that precious metal to the most precious relationship we should have in our lives or the most precious and strong relationship we should have in our life. I think there's so many elements of that. Creating engagement rings has always been a marketed thing and people can put their nose up to our diamonds even really supposed to be part of this process. Are we all just sold these ideas? But I think at the end of the day, it's about the intentionality about what you're doing. So everything you buy, everything you embrace represents you and it should represent you in one way or another. I think jewelry is just a beautiful conduit of saying, hey, here's how I feel, and I want to put that into a physical thing. But that's also why we're extremely intentional about how we take care of people through that process. We're constantly thinking through, how do we keep this a surprise for someone? How do we keep this with the sentiment that someone has shared with us in their story, right? We're not always working with just an exact example of what they want. Sometimes someone says, "Hey, I met her on a mountain. I want to figure out a way to put that in my ring. Can you help me?" And that's our connection point to our customers, right? We are building things that are going to be speaking to the most important parts of their lives. I think a lot about even when I started buying jewelry for myself. I've had jewelry in the past, it was always gifted. And so when you think about an engagement ring, that's usually gifted, right? When you think about our first pair of diamond studs, usually gifted, diamond necklace from our husband, gifted, right? So the other part of jewelry that I've really been thinking a lot about is, what does that look like for me when I don't have someone who's about to propose in 2 months? So I can't even patronize my own company right now if I only think about engagement rings. But I also feel like I would highlight the love for my husband, right? Why wouldn't I highlight the love for my daughter? Why wouldn't I highlight the pride I have for the work I put in somewhere? So, like, when I think about jewelry now, it's more of just anything that's meaningful in our lives. So, for me, like year one, I had completed year one at Wove. I hadn't really bought myself any jewelry yet. I'm still on a quote unquote founder CEO salary. It's not CEO public company salary, it's very much founder salary. So it's hard to do that. But I said, you know what? I'm so proud of myself for making it through this year. Like, I have my first big girl CEO job. That's a big deal. And so I wanted to celebrate myself. And so I bought myself a ring, a little ring that represents that accomplishment in my life. And I think that's just yet another way where we have been so intentional about using jewelry to highlight the things that we care about. But that's not just in bridal, it's also about you as an individual. I always tell people, we're not waiting for him to buy his diamonds. So let's think about how we want to celebrate ourselves or help the guy we want to be with choose the right things. And that really is connected to the process of Wove, which is where we collaborate on all levels. Whether you want to build that engagement ring that tells your story, or you want to build a ring just for you and you only know what it means every day when you're typing on your laptop.
I'm going to ask you this in a moment about your perception of just a younger couple nowadays, right? And how they actually think about approaching this process. Arguably might be a bit different from maybe 50 years ago. But you started to actually talk about the process. And I would love to come back to what Wove actually stands for and how it's so different from other jewelry brands. Jewelry is a crowded market. Maybe we talked about engagement ring, but Whoop has an entire collection of earrings and bracelets. What is the moat that Whoop is building that other brands can't replicate?
Our biggest thing is we are custom from scratch, and we allow you to try what you're building on at home before you build the real thing. And I think when we take a step back, we're often dealing with, like you said, that younger couple, oftentimes people who've not spent a ton of money in jewelry yet. They're still learning the terminology. They're still learning, how do I even describe what this is? They're also learning all of the styles and options that are out there. It's just such a foreign world when you're walking into buying an engagement ring or buying something, your first real fine jewelry piece. So for us, it's always been about making what was once very siloed to celebrities and people of high net worth, which is going and working with a jeweler to make literally anything from a sheet of gold and a diamond from anywhere in the world. That was a very gate kept experience. And why that custom experience, it needs to be accessible, is because it's actually not gate kept because it's out of reach from a budget perspective. It was just gate kept because it wasn't accessible from a technology perspective to most people. So most online retailers who are focused in on fine jewelry or focused in on bridal, they have a preset menu, right? Even if you can decide this stone and that setting and I want to merge them together, they may have pre-designed engagement rings that are beautiful. But like I mentioned, when we meet with someone, someone will tell us, I met her on a mountain. How do I put that into my ring? We're then talking about straight up writing, hand sketching something, going back and forth, and then literally casting it in gold. And that is something, again, that just has not really been accessible to a lot of people because it's such an artisan forward process. And those artisans are usually hyper localized. And personally, for my background, even being in the military, my parents are lower income growing up, right? Like, we didn't have hyper wealth in our families. So we don't have a jeweler. We just don't know those people, right? And when we think about Wove, it's really blending artisanship and connection and your jeweler, right? Like you can feel confident that you have your person, but we're making it super easy to use, technologically savvy to have it be easy, seamless. You can see renders, you can talk through any element of your design with someone who understands their vernacular, and you also then don't have to feel like you're speaking a foreign language to them. And then again, with those engagement rings, we create a custom replica ring of that design. So obviously, most of the people going into that engagement ring realm have not bought fine jewelry before. So they also usually haven't worn a ring with a 2 carat diamond on it before. So they want to make sure they can walk around in the house with it, they can go to the gym with it. They want to make sure it fits their lifestyle. And so that custom replica ring really allows us to give you that space to do that. And we do that on a few different ways. Like we're collaborative on the design, and sometimes we're working just with the proposer and it's a surprise to the wearer. Sometimes we start design with the proposer and the wearer. And then once we, as the designer, as the Wove designer, understands, okay, hear what the wearer's saying, I got their blessing, cool. All right, when we talk about budget, when we talk about timing, okay, bye wearer, we'll see you at the end, and we continue with the proposer. We also have situations where a proposer will do the whole process themselves. We will deliver the replica ring, and they'll actually propose with that replica ring and then say, hey, wearer, now you can come into the fold. Let's start from scratch if we need to. It has been such a cool experience to see all these different use cases of how people have used the Wove process because it's so collaborative, but it also gives you that space to say, wait a second, I don't love this. Can I change it? And that's just something that hasn't been a possibility in the fine jewelry space often because we are building one of ones, you're casting it in gold is just there at that point. So we're really bridging the gap from just that traditional flow that's usually for high society to really making sure that people who are new to the space can trust that they're getting something they're going to love for forever.
Yes, it is customized, but there is a force of scalability here. And I think when the brand launched on QVC, I believe it's actually coming up to 2 months now, we were talking about there's about a couple of hundreds, I think, of orders easily, right? That could be served what on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. So you have that technology power. And at the same time, you're working with lab grown diamonds, which I'm curious how you see is this a trend that is getting a lot more traction in the industry? I know the economy's covered this also previously. It's more affordable. It's probably more sustainable as well.
I have so many thoughts on lab diamonds. I love them. Spoiler alert, I love them. But on the capacity front, yeah, I think that's one of the things that has also been holding back. That gate kept space is also often because the jeweler that is making that custom piece for you is also the goldsmith. They're the one literally making it themselves. And jewelry making is an art, truly. There are multiple steps that go into play, multiple people. And oftentimes you've got this casting house and you've got the goldsmith who's setting the stone. Like all these things, right? And so we've been able to use technology to help us source diamonds quicker, more competitively. We've got a network of people that we work with, again, digitally to do parts of the process and just optimize the flow of everything. We have really thought through almost like the assembly line of custom to understand what knobs can we turn up or turn down to go with the flow of demand. On one end, it allows us to really focus on granularity for custom pieces that are one of one. We're working on those, right? Person to person. But to your point around QVC, we also have created a space where we've pre designed customizable pieces that for us, it's a matter of 2 to 3 clicks to scale that piece into something bigger. And so for us, it's about how do we maximize both custom, which has the intentionality and is handmade but also can scale to the point where it actually can meet the actual demand that we're seeing because so many people are shifting into this world of custom everything, right? I want a custom shoe. I want a custom mattress. I want my house to have custom cabinets because at the end of the day, we're making big investments in these things, right? And so it should be custom. It should match our lifestyle. It should focus on the stories that we want to tell. So what we've done is really optimize for those things. So there are certain pieces on our website that we've created specifically to be that, let's call it last click custom, right? We've built 95% of it. You get to change the last 5% to what you like, and boom, it's easy to go. We'll manufacture it, we'll get it out to you. And that was a big lesson that I learned at Parfait was So many women want a wig exactly to their liking, right? They want it cut a certain way, they want this color a certain way, they want the highlights a certain way, right? But what I found was most of the time women just saw a hairstyle and said, "Oh, I want that. Whatever that is, I want that." And they don't know the specifics. They don't have the artistry or the sort of creativity to think about it out of the top of their head. And so what I love is having this sort of custom fully, but also custom with some support, right? Custom with you're just doing the little bits to make sure it fits you and you're good to go. And I really love that we blended that at Wove. And then I would say on that second part of that is because lab grown diamonds are now such a thing, and I love the proliferation of them in both bridal and fine jewelry generally. We often have to talk about this, Diana. You and I have talked about this, like splitting our business in two, so we could talk specifics on bridal and then talk specifics about fine jewelry. Especially, we've got a core customer segment in fine jewelry who is Barbara. I'm sure we'll talk about Barbara at some point in the podcast. But because lab grown diamonds have really brought luxury to an approachable price point for a whole new market of people, you have a group of people who now can access a $2,000 tennis necklace, right? That used to be $10,000. It's a very different shopper that now has access to these beautiful pieces. And lab grown diamonds are pure diamonds. They just get their pressure from the lab instead of pressure from the earth. And I think as long as a jewelry community, we're focused on being transparent and honest about the diamond that we are selling to someone, just like we would with sharing the 4 C's of a diamond, just like as we would saying if this is 14 karat gold or 18 karat gold, and then allowing the consumer to choose what's best for them and what's best for our budget. I think it's jewelers' jobs to showcase the options, help them, the client, understand what works for their lifestyle and what's not, and really catering to the needs of those folks. So for us, we do all kinds of fine jewelry. We do all diamonds, right? We do natural diamonds. We do lab grown diamonds. The only cutoff we really have is it needs to be strong enough to hold up the test of time. So we really look at precious stones. So we love sapphires, we love rubies, lab or natural, but we're not huge fans of doing pieces in other stones. I won't go into the detail of that, but that's really where Wove has a standard of, okay, we want to make sure we're not selling you something that might crack or bend at some point in an unnatural way. But other than that, like our goal is to really meet that client where they are. And I think lab grown diamonds has just allowed so many more people in. And then I would say on the fine jewelry front, oh my gosh, lab grown diamonds just allow us to have so much more fun. We used to be in a place where you couldn't really, it wasn't feasible to make a yellow diamond cocktail ring for yourself for a random Tuesday, right? Those types of diamonds sit in museums. And now with lab, you could have a blue diamond, you could have a yellow diamond, you could create trendy pieces that you love that are still set in 14 karat gold, 18 karat gold, but they're lab. So the amount of money it takes to build it makes sense for something that's more trendy versus we used to build natural diamond jewelry and wear it at a gala and then put it in a vault, right? And then we don't really get to experience that piece of jewelry in the same way because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm scared to lose it. I'm scared it's too big or all the things. And so I just love, especially for my 50 and Fabulous group, my Barbaras, they are getting a chance to have so much fun with lab diamond jewelry, creating pieces that highlight their grandkids, their husbands, fun times in their lives, matching bracelets with their girlfriends. It's just created a whole new world of creative exploration and fun.
And it makes it more accessible. It opens up an opportunity to probably a group of the market that you would have never thought about wearing diamonds in the past. Is there perhaps a touching story, a customer story that you could think of, whether it's bridal or Barbara, which is the older segments that you could think of, and reminds you why Wove really works?
Yeah, I was thinking about these examples, and there's two examples that I wanted to share because one of them is connected to what happened when our bracelet went viral with Taylor Swift. And it's not necessarily one person, but it's really where we saw, okay, we're on to something. We had this viral bracelet, right? It's a beautiful, almost $6,000 bracelet, lab grown diamonds, 14 karat gold, gorgeous. And it's customized with beads to really be that friendship bracelet, but cast in gold and diamonds. And you think of Swifties as a certain age. Like when you think of a Swiftie in your mind, you're thinking of a certain person, right? What we found was when we went viral, the people who were buying that bracelet were Barbaras. They were 50 and fabulous, 60 and fabulous, 70 and fabulous, putting their husband's anniversaries on their bracelets, putting their 70th birthday. I remember one time we made one that had 70 diamonds because she was turning 70. And it just really showcased how people are we have so much pride in the people that we love and who we are. And there just really was not a great place to do that if you wanted to do something that wasn't going to turn your skin green, right? Like our options before here were go to Etsy and make a little like tchotchke thing or make something out of a bead. And I just feel like there was such a cool momentum of seeing this cross generational impact of it's just a bracelet, right? But it's really not just a bracelet. And people were telling their own stories every time. Not one of the bracelets that we made for the friendship bracelets, not one has been putting TNT on it. Not one. We've done every single one we've sold with that person's love story in mind. And that's been so thrilling and super exciting. We see proposals every day. Every proposal is so unique. But what I've really been just stopped by is how people have been using the customizable bracelet for themselves. And so there was this other situation where we make this bracelet obviously for adults, right? We make them for a standard woman, right? And we had a dad reach out and say, "Hey, I wonder if you guys can help me with this. My wife loves the TNT bracelet. I have a 7-year-old daughter. She's going to take her to the Eras tour for her first concert. They're super excited. Is there any way you could make a bracelet that would fit a 7-year-old?" And we were like, wow, out of diamonds, like this 7-year-old is like the coolest, most lucky 7-year-old on the planet. But we made it happen. We literally made mom one and we made daughter one. And the daughter's was like scaled down for a 7-year-old. And it was so cute. It was still made out of lab diamonds, still made out of gold. And then the dad sends us imagery of them at the concert. And I don't know, I'm probably more emotional about it because I have a young daughter. My daughter's 8, but I think about having those moments with my daughter for the first time. Like her first concert was a Mariah Carey Christmas Carol concert, and she will always remember that. I'll always remember that. And so for the dad to also be the one like commissioning that gift for his girls, right? Those are the stories that we get to be a part of. And we know that they're lasting impressions for the rest of their lives. So I think bridal, of course, is our main squeeze, but these sort of untraditional stories that have been coming out have been really cool to see as we continue to lean in there.
And it's all possible because you have that power to personalize. And I was thinking, friendship bracelets have been around, gosh, for centuries. I'm looking at kids and like you make those bracelets, they're made of threads and you're making them and you just wearing them, you shower with them, you're wearing them for years because they're friendship bracelets. And it is, again, such an emotional purchase that will never go away. It's embedded in just who we are. Simone, we have a section on the show where, speaking of emotional moments, giving a shout out to somebody that made an impact or is making an impact, actually, personal or a professional as well. Is there somebody that you could think of in this context?
Obviously, all my investors are great, right? Like my team's great, everyone's great. But I would say what's been so front of mind for us is really like, how do we get Wove to the next level? And like a catalyst of someone who has just continued to put us in position is my girl, Chelsea Macklin. She essentially started her career at LTK, was a marketing leader at Bumble, pre revenue to IPO, has just lived the world of consumer tech, but also lived the world of consumer tech in relationships, right? Like in a very emotionally charged world that is very much consumer. And over the last year and a half, I've leaned on her so much on multiple levels, not only as just like the GOAT, right? She's done the Serena Williams Super Bowl ad, right? Like she's done the big activations. She built Bumble BFF. Like she's had these really impactful moments on the market that I want to be able to do myself. So I look up to her a ton with that. But also balancing being a woman and driving change and being a mom in the thick of all of that and always having time to help others and really is driven by helping founders, helping emerging funders. She really represents such like an idealistic goal for me of how do I want to operate when I did my big business milestones, learned the things, we're in the trenches and now we're out of the trenches and now I can go and help other people. She has helped me so much. And I think what's unique about our relationship is she didn't write the biggest check into Wove, right? She's not incentivized to help me or help Wove get to a certain place because she's got $100,000 in this business. She's incentivized because she sees potential and she wants us to win genuinely as personally and professionally. And I just love people like that. It's who I strive to be for other people. And I think at the end of the day, our businesses succeed and they fail and the market changes and tariffs are added and then tariffs change. And through all of that, I think it's really important to have a village of people that you can lean on and that know you and understand what you're going through, but also then can give you phenomenal advice about how to navigate it or just sit there and let you vent and understand exactly what you mean. So Chelsea, that's my girl. She has just been such a huge supporter of me and Wove really. And she was a big catalyst in me getting connected to you too, Diana. It's just she gets it. And I feel like as a founder, we don't always have those people around. We have people who want to support us, but maybe just don't have the background to match. So like their energy is there, but they don't have the subject matter expertise. And I just think Chelsea does a great job of blending those two for me. So like fairy godmother of founder land, leadership land for me.
I love that. And I'm also thankful to Josie for introducing us. And I was talking
Yeah.
to Scott from Hotstar VC, and she's
Yeah.
obviously
I
part
love
of that.
Scott.
And we were like, we love Simone. And if I look back at probably some of like the strongest support that I received, actually, it's not necessarily from cash investors, but it's people that just making the right connection, listening to you. You mentioned that sort of like
Yep.
founder therapy at some point. Every founder, I think, is going to go through that. You have those moments, right? And somebody that has gone through it, there's no better person, somebody that actually felt and gone through all the up and downs that you've been part of. So she's amazing. She's great. What we have now, it's a quick fire round of questions. Normally they're supposed to be short, but there's always something that I pick up on and I always have to ask a follow up, but we'll see where we get to. I'm curious, you've been very immersed into jewelry, but is there a brand perhaps outside of the jewelry space that you deeply admire? And I'm curious why. What is it that you really like about that brand?
Oh gosh, that is a hard question. The first that comes to mind is Ame Cole. Ame Cole is a beauty brand that did all the things beauty founders want to do, raised capital, got into Sephora, built an amazing community. The products are phenomenal and they match every individual that wears them. It's just execution on all levels as a founder and as a woman of color and a leader and building the culture that she has. And unfortunately, Amicole is closing. That was announced, I think, a couple of months ago now after an amazing run. And I think at the end of the day, business is hard, period. That's probably the best I can put it. Business is really hard, even when you have a lot of the secret sauces that we all believe are rubber stamps that it's going to work. I'm really hoping some private equity team scoops them up. But what I also really admired about that brand is the way that they have taken such grace in this process of announcing closure. I truly believe that the founder there put on a masterclass on how to do this from a storytelling perspective to give respect to everybody who's been involved, who loves the brand, to be there for her community as she explains what happens. And I just think she handled it like a rock star. If listeners, you have not looked into the Amicole just PR campaign around what happened, it was chef's kiss. My heart as a marketer was just like, oh my God, I couldn't have curated a better way that both gives pragmatic realness around what happened, but also celebrates the impact that the brand had on the market. And I think why that speaks to me most is obviously the focus on building products for people that match their needs and is just well executed generally. But I think it's also because as a founder or a leader, you're constantly thinking about what if that happens to me? What if I'm the next headline that says we didn't make it, right? Like Q2 2025 was really tough on a lot of brands, especially in my cohort who raised capital in 2020, 2021, especially. There are a lot of us who are not making it through the summer. And so I think that while we all were in that sort of hype moment of We all got millions of dollars. We're all doing the things. We're building to the moon. And we're now maturing and seeing the life cycle that can happen. I just felt Ame Cole just again a master class of how to do it with grace and not think of any version of business failure as a real failure in your work, your team, and what happens next, and really setting yourself up for a very huge next chapter. But that's like a very emotional one for me. We work really hard. I hated to see that happen to her, but that brand is phenomenal. And I hope that it does make it out of this chapter. It gets a new home.
By all means, there's obviously not a reflection of her strengths and what she meant to pull off for these years. There's a lot of movement in the market, as obviously you mentioned. It's a lot of companies privatizing. There's a lot of private equity funds actually going into luxury. We'll see what happens. But yeah, it is a tough fundraising environment, period. And especially for consumer companies more than anything else. Adjacent to that, Simone, is there one common piece of advice that you disagree with? Because I'm sure you probably get unsolicited advice from a lot of people, but is there one that you completely disagree with?
People are going to drag me for this one. The advice that you should only focus on one thing, one priority. And I think that, like, to a degree, I get it, right? I get that level of tunnel vision. But as founders, literally building something from scratch with no real understanding of what's going to work, what's not, like, we don't have the luxury of having one priority because that one priority, it doesn't feel in and of itself, right? So, for instance, my one priority might be top line growth, right? But then how do I get there? There's a cajillion things I have to do. And so I think the nomenclature of, oh, just focus on one thing, do it really well, keep going from there. Don't be too stretched. And I think there's a level of, okay, having discernment around, all right, like how many is too many. But to be honest, like why I feel like I've been able to stay afloat in my multiple startups, especially as a marketer, where you're literally figuring out from scratch what works, what doesn't. I think it should be more of understand, yes, like your ultimate goal as a brand, but you have to be willing to test and learn a ton. I think the better advice is how do you create a system around testing and learning quickly and rapidly? And how do you create the way to measure those tests really effectively? Dan, I've been asking you to ask the team. I need the zip codes. Like, I need such detail because when I do this analysis of what works, like, I need to be rapid fire understanding. So if we need to make a change, we can, right? But that means I have to be looking at, I can't just say, let's just start with bars. We're going to focus on bars and we're going to put our ads in bars and we're going to see. No, no, no. Like, I have to have multiple variable groups, multiple go to market strategies aligned similarly, but with very defined variables, just so I can have a test group and I can have what am I looking for in terms of variance so I can tell what's working or not. And unfortunately, that doesn't, in the case of advertising, right, in distribution, you could say, okay, cool, I want to test Meta or I want to test TV ads. If it doesn't work, what are you going to do then? Now you've spent money and you also have not made traction on something else that could work, like a strategic partnership or a change in your funnel or all these things. So I think for founders, if you get the TLDR, have one goal, have one focus, I just think that whoever's saying that probably hasn't built anything before. And so just understand who you're getting advice from. Not all advice is good advice. And just remind yourself that you can take advice and be respectful and consider it without just saying, oh, no, I don't want to hear it. I do a lot of that. Consider it, but then it's up to you to discern what makes sense for you. So take it, be open to that feedback, be open to that advice, but know what you're really dealing with day to day. And at the end of the day, if your top goal is staying in business, there's a lot of layers to staying in business, and you can't necessarily be focused just on one thing.
You cannot. It just goes against what's happening right now in the market, unless probably the business will just come out of business. I think, and being a marketeer, building a consumer brand and trying to figure out your marketing channels, it is fundamentally, I would say, as tough as fundraising, if not more, because there's so much that goes into it. As you said, measuring, testing quickly. And it's one of those industries that is changing literally overnight. There's so much disruption happening right now that you just always have to be pivoting and looking for additional channels and strategies and blending them I'm with you on that. I'm probably because we also share very similar roles, and being an operator, you cannot. I think you have to be basically one foot there, one foot there.
I think the other thing I would add to that though, if you can't choose one thing, then what do? You can't be on the opposite side of doing all the things all the time, even though my calendar would probably say no. But where I've done a better job, and I think where you get your mastery is figuring out proportion of time to those different things and delegation of those things in different ways. So just being really mindful of, like you said, fundraising and figuring out your marketing channels are both like big beasts. I have to do those at the same time. I had to do those at the same time for a year and also improve our site conversion and also manage people and also discover new manufacturing and supply chain partners to make sure if something happened like a tariff, we wouldn't be like, but thinking about that as okay, if I have 100%, slice it to make sure that you're spending adequate amount of time on the things. So rather than maybe just saying one priority, just make sure you prioritize. You have to. And being real with yourself about where you need help, where you can pass the baton, 70% is still done. And accepting that and being able to move with that, it's the only way.
Yeah, it's a very simple framework that I'm using, and you don't see my screen, but I'm surrounded by post-it notes, and they're all essentially categorized in urgent and important, then urgent, not important, and important, not urgent. And that's just how I run my day because you wake up, you've got 100 things to do, right? Where do you place your energy and your effort? And the next question, Simona, is about consumer trends in general. Perhaps one trend that you think, oh my gosh, it's so overhyped. We hear it all over again. Is this really gonna
Yep.
last?
I think AI generally, of course, like I think we're all starting to see a little bit of that, like AI in everything. And also the assumption that AI, if it can be applied, should be applied because it would be better. There's an assumption that if you can use it, it will be better than what a human can do. And this is even back to my parfait days. I believe that AI is a tool, right? And humans should use that tool to improve their productivity, improve their ability to get creative, or even just improve their ability to manifest and showcase the ideas that they have. Because I think a lot of times, like I know for me, and even in design, we sometimes can't really, like when I say slimmer sides and you say slimmer sides, it's not like how slim and who knows. So using AI to help us translate that, whether it be through an image, a video, or another way of saying the same words, right? That connects us and gets us to a better outcome. Yes, 100%. I think especially for us, we were considering this idea of, okay, where does AI even live in Wove? And we are a hyper personalized, hyper emotional flow, right? I hate generalizations, period. Like, truly, we get generalized in this D2C consumer brand, right? So, like, D2C consumer brands should use AI for customer service. And to us, like, that doesn't really work in that same way because every order is custom. So, there's some intentionality. There's also emotional intelligence. We talk about certain things, even down to, like I mentioned, sometimes our wearer was in the design process and now she's not. So, like, I have to know to remove her from the thread. There's all those little things, right? And so I think that for us, we're optimizing. We're using AI for sure in our business, but it is human led. So it's never a direct AI move. It'll just speed up my ability to get back to you faster because I don't have to write out 2 paragraphs. I've trained my GPT to give the level of detail that I'm used to doing, but now I can answer your email in 2 minutes instead of 10 minutes because I'm trying to orchestrate that and make it really nice and sound good to you and make sure I'm thinking about all the things. I think that's it. It's like AI doesn't necessarily make everything better if it can be applied. I think we really need to be thoughtful about where it makes sense. And honestly, for our brand, I think a lot of brands in luxury and that are heavily relationship based, you have to be very careful about getting too close to the edge on using AI because then you start to lose the essence of your brand, which is that human connection, which is that relatability, the trust. So, like for us, we're really doing everything we can to maintain that at the core. Look, a question from a colleague who's helping us with something else, not in our company, external colleague, said, "Hey, is Wolf using bots?" And I said, "Oh my God, I can say no. No, we proudly don't use bots. But do we use AI in answering your questions? 100% yes. But being able to say we are human first, like your first interaction, that to me, I think is going to become the disruptor. It's going to become the real trust builder. But it's on us as business owners to understand how do we optimize the rest of our business. Because now, if humans need to be on the forefront of relationships and client facing, okay, then that now I don't have time to sit and input information into a form. So let's use AI to do that. And it's just really being nimble about what makes sense for our business. Yeah, that's how I've been thinking about it.
Absolutely.
And I just feel like it's overhyped.
No, absolutely. I think there's industries that are fundamentally relationship based. Even fundraising, as you said, help automate some of your emails, write them, whatnot. There are industries that you cannot remove that human element because then it's not going to happen. I know we're about to wrap up, and gosh, I have a ton of questions for you, but I'm definitely going to invite you back. I mean, the whole period coming up, it's a huge period for you, and we're excited, and there's so much happening. And I have a question where it's not an if, it's when we sit down in 5 years and along the way, what do you hope Wolf will have achieved for customers, for the industry, and even for you personally, where you see the brand going?
Gosh, 5 years, I want Wove to be $100 million brand, period. That is like my number one goal. And what that means is we have created a scalable human first model that actually takes into account what people want, how they feel, and the stories that they want to tell through jewelry. And I think that, again, like jewelry is a conduit of something so much bigger. And so not only does the $100 million represent obviously like great returns for ourselves, for our investors, like comfortable living, right? I'm tired. I got to pay off these we're in student loans. Like that's got to be done by 5 years, we hope. But it also just shows that we are setting the stage for a new standard, right? I don't think anybody should buy something for $20,000 online that they've never seen in person before. I just don't think that's a smart decision to make, right? So I hope that we live in a world where people understand that there is a pathway to feeling comfortable and trusting what you have and using the internet not as a scary place to just like drop your information, drop your finances, and not feeling like anyone has your back. A lot of our digital experiences today feel like that. So I'm hoping that when we get to scale in 5 years, that we've created a team that supports, that moves nimbly, that every time someone interacts with Wove, they feel like they're interacting with a friend, like their trusted confidant. So now we don't have to just talk to her best friends or her mom when we're going through this process. Like I can talk to Simone, I can talk to Jessie on my team, and she's got me. And now there will no longer be that pressure or uncomfortability when going through an engaging process. When you want to tell a story and you want to put sweet little messages that only you and your partner have in your bracelet, you've got a trusted partner to do that. You don't have to put it into a bot. You don't have to put it into a form. It's not like some mystery like game. It is still human to human, but we are optimizing to use technology to make it easier, better than ever to build products that we will adore for the rest of our lives. And that's where I hope we'll be. What else? I hope by then, gosh, whole team has benefits, just like the basics. Like whole team has all the frills of a big business. You know what I also hope, Dana? I hope that right now we're starting our first creatives on telling the Wove story and the process of Wove and working with us. In 5 years, I want to be able to sit back and think about the culturally relevant and exciting creatives we've been able to do and get out to the market for Wove and really going beyond just like your standard romantic feel of showcasing fine jewelry and showcasing bridal. I'm really excited about at 5 years thinking back to all the really dope understood stories that we now get to put in mainstream that people will just see themselves in Wove. That would be my ultimate goal.
Creating essentially just a new norm for people to purchase affordable luxury jewelry, whether it's for bridal or for yourself. And hopefully in 5 years, we'll get that pair of lab grown diamond earrings that Barbara is ordering.
Yes, plenty. I'm sure we'll have plenty of them by then.
Now, it's an exciting journey. We're all very excited. And as people listen to this podcast, the campaign will be live And there's so much happening. I'm really excited for you. And we're just really happy to be part of this journey with you.
Thank you, Diana. I appreciate it. I'm so excited. I think this is going to be a game-changing partnership for brands like mine, but also just showcasing like what's possible now. We just talked about Amicole, we talked about artisan consumer, and I think this is going to be the new normal of partners really thinking through how can I actually help operationally, helping with the hardest parts of building a new brand, which is literally getting your message out there and having that a part of the core ownership table of our brand. It's going to be crazy. So I'm so excited and I can't wait to see how everything goes.
Me too. Thank you for joining us on Media Capital. If you enjoyed the episode, leave a review, follow the pod, and subscribe at Media for Growth as well.